Welcome to Co-Opinions. My name is Josh, and today for this last part of our Zelda series, I have Jake with me.
Hello, everybody.
So it's been a little while since we recorded, even though ideally these will be coming out right after each other. Jake, why don't you tell me what you've been playing since we last recorded?
So I recently finished a game called Kona, which takes place in, I want to say it was 1960s or 1950s, Canada.
Interesting.
And it's a kind of detective, not quite noir, but private eye, find out who murdered someone. Really different, not what I was expecting, because the videos kind of make you believe it's supposed to be like this stark, white, everything's under snow, you're trying to survive, and it's really not.
So did you feel misled in an overwhelmingly negative way?
Not overwhelmingly negative. I did finish the game.
But how long was it?
Maybe about 6 hours.
Well, I mean, compare that to Gone Home, which is like 2.
That's true.
So, I mean, it's weird to be defending the length of a game at 6 hours, but I'll be able to roll that into the things I've been playing. Do you have anything else to say about Kona?
No, not really.
Okay. So, since we last recorded, I beat the 4th Shantae game, which I thought was really solid. It was also on the short side. I would say it's maybe the shortest Shantae game so far. I've played 2, 3, and 4. I tried to play the original one, but it's aged poorly enough to me that I just decided to keep moving forward. Besides that, we also picked up the Crash Bandicoot remake trilogy, which, while good, I have many complaints I could make about, which I will save till a later time, because we gotta stay on point here. But we also played this game called The Sexy Brutale. Have you heard of it?
Yes, actually, I believe I have it on my wish list on Steam.
That game, if you have the chance to pick it up, 100% pick it up. There was so much interesting about that game, I feel I could do a mini-sode on it, because the premise just fascinated me. The idea where you had to keep rewinding time and interact with the environment in such a way to prevent murders without directly interacting with anybody. In addition, it's got an electro swing soundtrack. If I would have to fault it for anything, it's that the ambition was so intense in that everything is happening at the same time. By the end of the game, you've had to save about 7 or 8 different people. But the scenarios that they're going through are constantly happening. So the person who you're saving at the end of the game is going through his thing as the exact same person who you're saving at the beginning of the game. So they play it safe with the complexity of the murders, because if too many things interacted with each other, I think they had a very strong chance to shoot themselves in the foot. A thing that I've been doing a lot recently is if a game comes out that I really love, if the soundtrack gets put out on vinyl, I'll snatch it up in a heartbeat. Now, indie games in particular have been noted for having just an outstanding soundtrack. For example, my Bastion OST vinyl's coming in. And
I thought you already had that.
I had the CD. The vinyl was just recently announced, and I pre-ordered it as soon. I have the Transistor vinyl. And actually coming back with my Transistor, with my Bastion vinyl, I sent my Transistor vinyl out to California to have the composer and the vocalist both sign it. Because,
oh, wow. Yeah,
I mean, they're super cool guys. If they hadn't been buried under the fact that Pyre is coming out a week from tomorrow, I think they would have got it back to me in pretty short order. I'm not faulting them for it.
Is that Supermassive Games?
Supermassive. No. Supergiant.
Supergiant Games.
Supermassive did.
That's their next one?
Pyre is Supergiant Games' next game.
Okay.
That's the one where you play a mystical 3-on-3 sport to determine if you get out of purgatory. I'm going to buy it because I love their games. So, we also picked up Puyo Puyo Tetris for the Switch, which is a combination of Puyo Puyo and Tetris, which, Brent, you've heard this story, right?
Yes, he finally found a game where he could just wholesale whoop up on you. And for some reason, he was like, oh, well, it's as simple, you just got to think about it this way. And ever since then, he's just been steamrolled.
I can't understand this. What kind of savancy do you have here? He goes, well, you just need to plan ahead. I'm like, that doesn't help me, Brent. And he goes, well, just plan what you're going to do after you get rid of the trash. Because when you drop lines on other people, it's garbage. And I go, oh. And after that, just steamrolled right through him.
God.
which I thought was hilarious. I also replayed the first Danganronpa game on the Vita, which is a cross between Battle Royale and Phoenix Wright. I love the series, and the third one is coming out in September, so I wanted to play the HD remakes that I bought for the PS4. I got the HD remake of the first one, the second one, and the spin-off set between the first and second one. I absolutely adore the series, so I would 100% recommend
I've
it.
actually heard of those, and I've put them on my list of, I should probably pick these up sometime.
They're on Steam, so...
You know how that goes.
Yeah, I know how that goes. But I've also started up Arkham Knight, and I believe when I finish up Arkham Knight, I'm going to have Brent on to do a very special episode about the Arkham series, because he's hugely passionate about it.
I gotta say, I liked the first two, and haven't played anything after that.
Okay. Origins I didn't play because it just looked like...
It wasn't really a real...
Yeah, that's what I heard.
It wasn't done with... That was Rockstar,
That was
wasn't it?
not Rocksteady. So, Rocksteady...
That one wasn't, but Rocksteady did the first two.
Rocksteady did 1, 2, and 4, and WB Games, I think, did Origins. Origins got an okay reception, but it didn't set the world on fire.
Well, and it was also like a prelude to...
Yeah, it was a prequel. It was weird.
So it was just... From everything I saw, it just really wasn't all very good.
It screamed fan game to me, but that's neither here nor there. Let's get to the meat of things. For the very last part of our 2D Zelda series, we are going to primarily talk about Link Between Worlds, and we are going to touch very briefly on Triforce Heroes, because out of the two of us, only I have played it, and it is going to be almost solely negative things.
Well, so it's kind of funny that we're talking about A Link Between Worlds as a 2D game when it's a 3D game set up as a 2D top-down, sort of, on a console made specifically for 3D vision.
Yeah, it was funny. Except it was also amazing.
It was very amazing.
If we consider Link Between Worlds to be 2D, Link to the Past to be 2D, I feel like we have to consider Link Between Worlds because it's the exact same visual, the exact same presentation.
It's intended to be a sequel to Link,
a
Link to the
direct
Past.
sequel, which they originally announced this game in 2011 or 2012.
I think they announced it in 2012.
Okay, and I went crazy for it.
Right. I mean, Link to the Past was my favorite Zelda game of all time. Just bar none. And when they were like, oh yeah, we're making a sequel, look how cool it's going to be, I was like, ooh,
oh my God.
I gotta find a way to own this. And then they were like, oh, we're also coming out with a special edition 3DS XL. In which case, then I just started throwing my wallet at the TV until it actually came out.
Yeah, I hear that didn't work for a lot of people.
What, throwing the wallet at the TV?
Yeah.
Well, I got mine, so it must have worked out all right.
That's what matters, as long as you got yours.
Actually, I got two by accident.
Hey, isn't that how Brent got his?
It is. I sold him my other one with game in box. So.
There you go. So when this game was announced, everybody was incredibly stoked about it. And because this game came out after Skyward Sword, so a lot of people were really curious. We haven't talked about 3D Zelda games yet, and actually I'm going to be talking about those with Brent. But Skyward Sword was the first 3D Zelda game where I kind of was tepid on it because it was so brutally hand-holding that it had taken all of the sense of wonderment out of the game. So I was wondering how they were going to approach that in Link Between Worlds. And the way they did it, I found to be ingenious, personally. I'm not trying to oversell it here. But the fact that you can get into any dungeon, so before you can get into any dungeon, they give you a set of semi-guided tasks to inadvertently introduce you to all the major characters in the game. And I didn't even realize until I had was playing through it a second time that that's what they were doing. Because the very first character you hear from, major character. When you go into town, major character. When you go to try and get the runny boots, Pegasus boots. Yeah, runny boots, right? Well, because Did you even get the Pegasus boots during the normal course of gameplay?
At this point, I mean, I played it when it came out in 2013, so it's been a long time.
The only reason I specifically remember it is because the guy who stole from the Zora Queen, he has the Pegasus boots.
Mm-hmm.
And he did the thing from Link to the Past where you got close and he would run off.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that's how it was. So I beat the game. And then I go, oh yeah, you get the Pegasus boots from that guy by popping out of the wall next to him. Oh my god, I never did that. So I beat the whole game.
Oh, no kidding?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Because there were parts later where I'm like, God, this would be so much easier if they gave me the boots. So
wow, no, I got the boots, I don't want to say fairly early on, but I do remember getting the boots like probably at least three quarters of the way in. Maybe a half of the way in.
But they introduce, when you go to talk to the witch, they introduce a main character. When you come out of the Lost Woods for the first time, they introduce a main character. And it's all done so organically that I just thought, hey, I'm interacting with people. It didn't even jump in my mind that they were going, by the way, here's people who will matter later, but we're just not going to make them obnoxious. And I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, this game easily replaced Link to the Past as my favorite game, which is impressive because Link to the Past has managed to stay my favorite Zelda game for decades.
Yeah, I think at this point, which it seems less impressive now that we just looked it up and the game's almost been out for 5 years. It's officially been out for 4 as of this November, I think. But I've replayed it a few times, and I beat it in hero mode, actually, which... yeah, it was kind of difficult, but actually I take that back. The final boss can kill you in one hit if you don't have any damage upgrade, defense upgrades.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I took a hit from him and it took off 5 hearts, and luckily, I'm getting way, way ahead of myself at this point. So after they introduce all the significant characters and you do all the introductory little dungeony bits, then the game kind of opens up because they introduce you to Ravio, who... what was your opinion of this little bunny hooded freak?
He annoyed the crap out of me.
The whole game?
Mostly the whole game.
Okay.
Right at the very end, he kind of redeems himself. But
so we're going to just go ahead and say, if you haven't figured it out at this point, there's going to be spoilers. It's going to be spoilers all over.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So... yeah, I'll agree with that. Up until the point where you found out he was alternate Link.
Right.
Like, oh, that actually kind of explains a lot. And once Ravio was introduced, he gave you the ability to get all the standard items in the game. Your bow, your ice rod. The only one that you couldn't get was the sand rod. And that was an intentional design decision, because you needed the sand rod in order to get a significant upgrade. I cannot for the life of me remember what it was, but you couldn't... I think it's how you got the other Power Glove upgrade, whatever the other Power Glove upgrade was. And once you got the second Power Glove upgrade, you could go literally anywhere in the map. So if you immediately went and... I'm trying to figure out the best way to structure this, because otherwise I'm going to hop all around. When you are talking to Ravio to get the items, at that point you're supposed to be trying to rescue the sages, because you find out very early on that somebody's going around and kidnapping people. You don't know why. And they introduce you to the main antagonist, who honestly, from all the promos, I thought it was going to just be Skinny Ganon.
Skinny Ganon?
I mean, what does he look like? He looks like a skinny, weird, effeminate Ganon.
Okay, I guess I can go with that.
And he is the one who introduces you to the concept of being able to smush up against the wall, because that's what he's doing. He's putting people...
You're talking about Yuga.
Yuga, yes, yeah. Yuga, if I hadn't said the name. And due to a plot device, you're able to get out of the wall, and this becomes a major game mechanic, which becomes really, really interesting because it allows you to get into really tight spaces. They use it in really ingenious ways. They use it so you can avoid attacks that will kill everybody. They use it so you can get past areas that don't normally have platforms. I thought it was a really neat mechanic that was only one of the only times I've used 3D on my 3DS. Did you use 3D at all?
Oh yeah, as much as I could until it would give me a headache and then I'd have to switch over.
It was, yeah, I think having played the game twice now, that is the only game I've ever kept the 3D on for the entire game. And
I really tried, because, like, the lava dungeon was just astounding in 3D.
Oh, yeah. I can't say enough positive about it. In fact, if I were ever to get a new 3DS XL, I would definitely leave the 3D on because of how wonderful that 3D effect was. I can't accurately articulate how amazing it was to see the way some of this stuff popped off the screen and made some of the puzzles easier, but never made them so easy you had to have the 3D on to facilitate the completion of it. Anyways, so as Yuga's going around, you find he's kidnapping a bunch of people, and it was all the people you'd interacted with at the beginning of the game. So you would hear some Zoras over talking and go, somebody has kidnapped the queen, and you would summon the witch on the broomstick, and it would just be the broomstick. Like, what is going on here? Where have all these people gone? And it turns out that Yuga has kidnapped them with the intention of using the paintings for something. He's kind of vague about it. Once he gets the final one, you turn out he's using it to summon Ganon. That's bad news bears. And then, due to circumstance, you end up in the Dark World, and he successfully summons Ganon immediately. Like, well, this is bad news. And then he merges with him, and you go on your little quest to save all the sages. At this point, that's when Ravio really that's when he starts telling you can buy the items so you can keep them for realsies. Because up till this point, if you rented them and you got knocked out, you had to return them.
Right.
And that was kind of the risk and reward trade-off there. I like that it penalized you for dying, but it didn't over-penalize you. And on top of that, money was literally everywhere in that game.
It was. I mean, like every Zelda game, you break a pot, you cut grass, there's money.
And the game-spanning side quest in this one was, to me, the easiest of any of them by far. Finding all 100 Maimais.
Yeah.
They were just super... The audio cue was super easy. The fact that they told you how many was in an area made it super easy. And the upgrade you got for getting all 100 completely broke the game. I actually... Well, you had to have too, because you said you 100%ed it. It made the Tower of Trials incredibly easy. What you got for getting all 100 was a spin attack that took up the entire screen.
Oh, yes. Dear God, that made things so much...
It just broke it.
Monstrously evil. And it was great.
I loved it. There's no other way about it. But I see you have a couple things pulled up.
I do. So, one of the things that I found interesting in doing some research on this was... The game was originally started development in 2009.
Which was before Skyward Sword even came out, wasn't it?
Right. It was actually... They started working on it immediately after Spirit Tracks. And so they started off with the idea of basing the game around communication. And no, I have no idea how that would work.
Well, maybe that's what Triforce Heroes turned into, which was not good communication. But continue.
But apparently that's where they were going with it. And... They also prototyped the idea of the merging to walls. And Miyamoto, basically they pitched to Miyamoto, and Miyamoto was like, no, this is not a good idea. I don't think we should go this route. And then sometime after that, pretty much there were 3 people that were originally on the team of putting something together, and they got reassigned to other projects.
Oh.
To the point where all of 2010, there was 0 movement on a Zelda mobile game.
Ooh.
And then in 2011, they started bringing it back up. They were trying to basically say, hey, Miyamoto, what do you think about this? Hey, Miyamoto, what do you think about that? And each time they were kind of like, he was basically like, I don't really think that's a good idea. Right up to the point where they had made a recommendation to him, and he said, I don't like that. Instead, why don't we make a sequel to Link to the Past?
Mind blown.
Right. Which, I mean, I had been saying that for years, so I don't know if he listened to my fan ramblings or what, but...
He got that letter that you wrote him in crayon back in 1994. How old were you back then? Like 35?
I was 14.
Oh.
I can't help it. You were still in diapers.
Hey, just because a 7-year-old Josh needed diapers, that's no reason for mockery. Anyways.
Just because I was still writing in crayon when I was 14 doesn't mean anything either.
Okay. Valid. Continue.
So apparently, real development started on it in 2012, which is about the time that they also announced it to the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we've seen what it comes out as, which was a phenomenal game.
Oh, it got gangbusters reviews and sales. I mean, it sold over, I think I saw the initial sale was over like 2.5 million or something.
Yeah. That was in the first 5 months.
First 5 months, it just
exploded.
Oh.
And on top of that, apparently, when they started going into development and, they basically decided we're going to go with a Link to the Past sequel, they found out that it's not quite that simple because, of course, they still wanted that kind of top-down feel of Link to the Past for it.
Oh, right. This goes back to that 2D, 3D thing you were talking about.
It does. So, one, they had to work with the fact that when you merge to a wall, it completely changes the
perspective?
The perspective and the angle, which doesn't seem like it'd be that hard, but apparently they one of the things is we think of it as a top-down, but it's actually a 3/4 down. Where it's probably at about maybe a 72-degree angle.
That's a very specific angle, but continue.
Somewhere between 45 and 90.
All right, split the difference.
They had a lot of problems with getting that to work the way they wanted it to, especially with the 3D effect of the 3DS, on top of having to switch perspectives. And then they started running into issues where they really wanted the ability with the 3DS for the drag and drop, but at the 30 hertz rate,
was it 30 hertz or 30 frames per second?
Maybe it's 30 frames per second.
I'm about to say, I remember reading about this.
Yeah, it was probably the 30 frames per second. They ran into issues where if you tried to use the stylus to drag and drop an item for use, it would lag really bad. And so they basically had to kind of set the game to double that.
Yeah, I heard that they really had to push for the 60 frames per second for performance reasons.
Which means that they're really taxing the 3DS now in comparison to what they were before. So there was actually quite a few different technical aspects that they had to overcome, and they did it all with just shy of a year. And
they put out something that was absolutely phenomenal. But what else we got in here?
Everything else I've got is really kind of based around the story and the setting of the game.
Okay, let's talk more about that from your perspective then, because I gave a brief overview of the basic game. You save all the sages, you go confront Yuga, you find out that Yuga was in cahoots with Dark Zelda or Hilda, and then you...
So, A Link to the Past obviously kind of alludes to something that happened in the past in the Link to the Past game. The original, we'll call it the original game. It's not the first game, obviously. But
Link to the Past, what that was talking about was unofficially, it was talking about what happened in Ocarina of Time.
Right, which was a game that didn't exist at the time it was written.
Correct.
But it talks about what kind of ruined the world.
Yeah, that's when Ganon killed Link.
Right. And so in A Link to the Past, you have this dual world setup where you have the world of light and the world of ruin.
Right.
And it was interesting to see what they were going to do with something called A Link Between Worlds, because is this just a remake of A Link to the Past? And instead, it was really cool to see that instead of having a light world and a dark world, and the dark world used to be the golden world, this was actually two mirrored worlds. So everything was mirrored. You had Zelda and Hilda. Zelda was, a blonde princess. Hilda was a black-haired princess. They both had Triforces, except the Triforce in the Hyrule world was, pointing up, and the Triforce for Lorule, which was the other world, get it? High, low, Lorule.
Hey-oh, be here all week.
Yeah.
Tip your waiter.
It pointed down instead, so it was a direct mirror of the Triforce of Hyrule.
Now, I'm going to interject real briefly here, and here's where 4th grade Josh had a fangasm. Because when I was a kid, I'm like, oh, what if there was a anti-Triforce? Because there's a missing gap in the middle. So it's like the dark part of it or whatever. I'm like, oh my God, they're actually doing it. Somebody got my notes from when I was a child. And then we'll touch on this much more extensively when I have Brent on for the 3D one. But when you fight the Ganon analog at the end of Skyward Sword, his version of the Master Sword has an upside down Triforce on it. I really want that expanded on. That could have just been coincidental, but come on.
Well, and for anybody who doesn't remember when this game came out, they obviously did a bundle with the 3DS.
Right.
And in that bundle, the 3DS, the top half of it was gold colored. You know, typical Zelda golden livery.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom half was black.
Right.
And transposed in a kind of matte versus gloss setup, on the gold one, you had the Hyrule Triforce, and in the black, you had the Lorule Triforce, which was cool and really made you think, oh, not only is it a dark world, not only is it the mirror opposite of Hyrule, but they have a black Triforce. And that didn't quite turn out to be the case.
So that was another thing I was disappointed in, is that Hilda's goal was to get Hyrule's Triforce. That was her whole bit, because Lorule had been degrading since they destroyed... How they destroyed their Triforce is beyond me, but they did.
Well, so the story went, because in Hyrule, Ganon wanted the Triforce. He basically got the Triforce. The Seven Sages and the hero got the Triforce back from him, and they split the Triforce up so that it would never be used for evil again. One went to the princess, one went to the hero, and one went to Ganon. And so Ganon still has that one piece of the Triforce. In Lorule, when the fighting was happening, basically kind of like how Ganon tried, they managed to defeat Ganon, but instead of splitting it up so it couldn't be used by one person for evil intent, they just destroyed it. Hyrule didn't choose to destroy it, they chose to split it up. Lorule chose to completely destroy it so that it would never be misused again, which, if I'm remembering the way Skyward Sword was, the Triforce was created by...
The Triforce was created by the three goddesses, and it was handed off to Hylia, who was then referred to as the goddess. It's kind of inconsistent who the gods and goddesses are through the series, but that's neither here nor there. That's really a 3D game discussion.
Well, yes, but the reason why I was bringing it up was because if you take that idea of the canon, which they were coming directly off of, if you look at, you know, they created that, and that created the prosperity of Hyrule. The same thing was true for Lorule, that the Triforce was directly linked to the prosperity of the world, and when they destroyed it, then the prosperity of the world just crumbled away, and the
world was literally falling apart.
Right.
When you went to Lorule, it was actually in different sections you had to access through different parts of Hyrule. And that was... It created an interesting gameplay mechanic, to be sure. Now, here is one complaint that I do have about the game. So, Hilda wanted to steal the Triforce so Lorule would quit degrading. And then when you put the Triforce back together at the end of the game, or you access it or whatever, is it Link and Zelda both wish for Lorule to get their Triforce back?
I believe it was realistically just Zelda.
Okay. But why didn't she just ask then? I mean, there's no way they couldn't have known what the Triforce in Hyrule could have done.
I don't think they did. Keep in mind that it was centuries that happened. Anything that they had known about the Triforce was probably gone. They probably destroyed that, so no one would even try and make another one. So I really think that it's kind of one of those lost information things. All she knew was the Triforce was directly linked to prosperity, and they didn't have one, and by gaining another one, they could fix that prosperity problem.
And the fact that she is not direct with you about it, I guess that's what really throws me, because when you come to Lorule, what else did they need from you at that point to get the I don't remember why she just doesn't jack you as soon as you come through.
Because you don't have the Triforce.
How do you get... I don't remember getting the Triforce. Oh, the sages bestow it upon you when you save all of them. Derp-a-derp. Okay. Obviously, playing through it twice wasn't enough. I need to boot that back up.
Whatever excuse you need to play the game again.
Pretty much. I did not, just as a quick gameplay note, you can't, when you beat the game on hero mode, it shows all the sages like standing around waving hi to you. If you do a challenge, the chicken challenge, you know about this?
I want to say yes.
So you have to get a heart piece. You have to avoid flying cuckoos coming at you for like 99 seconds or something.
God, yes.
To get the chicken at the end of hero mode, you have to avoid them for 999. You have to max the counter out. And then you get a chicken. So continue talking about your gameplay points, and I'm going to look up a picture of that chicken.
God.
Yeah, can you even imagine?
The one of those mini games that absolutely frustrated the hell out of me was probably Octoball.
Oh, you mean when they just brought the exact same boss from the Link to the Past back? What are you thinking, Octoball?
I'm talking about the baseball corollary. That the pitcher was an
Octorok.
Yes.
I was thinking
and you had to hit the ball in a specific location to get the proper number of points, you had to hit things that were flying across the screen, like little birds and all sorts of other things. It was just like nothing worked ever. I could never get those things to go where I wanted them to for nothing.
The one I remember I had the most problem with was when you had to run from one end of Hyrule to the other one for a heart piece. I don't remember why, but I knew out of all of them, that was the one I had the most trouble with. And I gotta say, looking up Link Between Worlds chicken ending, I'm not finding a lot of chicken ending, but I'm scrolling too far and I'm finding some salacious fan art. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out of this one. Back on focus. What else did you have? Because I could continue fanboying about this. The fact that the dungeons, they never gave you items that were critical to beat the game, but they made it much easier. The ability to upgrade your sword came from the dungeons, which was interesting in and of itself because you had to get master ores. It took 2 master ores for an upgrade. Mm-hmm. And the Dark World Lowrule Smith wouldn't upgrade your sword until the Hyrule Smith had upgraded it. He would call your master sword inferior until the Hyrule Blacksmith upgraded it.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting, but anyways.
A little full of himself, but
yeah, he
did seem to upgrade it even better. So.
Oh yeah, he gave you the gold one. And you upgraded your magic meter that way. I can't remember some of the other upgrades. Do you remember them off the top of your head?
No, there was the hook shot and the nice hook shot, the hammer, but the nice hammer.
Right. All those upgrades, though, those were done through the Mai-Mais. Anything you got from Ravio was upgraded through the Mai-Mai.
And the concept of having to basically rent your items when it was announced annoyed the piss out of me. Because I don't know, there was just something about not having the permanence of the items. I have to keep paying this chump who's living. By the way, in the game, he takes over your house. So at the very beginning of the game, you rescue Ravio, and you're like, okay, stay here. And he's like, okay, I'll give you these. I'll basically rent you these items to help you along your quest. Also, I'm taking over your living room. So, pay me money.
Yeah, he was a dick. There's really no two ways about it. I guess also the items were the Master Sword upgrades, the Hylian Shield, totally forgot about that, the Blue Mail, the Red Mail, and the Titan's Mitt. Also, we glossed over the fact that to get the Master Sword, you needed 3 pendants. But I kind of feel like that doesn't need to be reiterated, because this is not the first time that's been a thing.
No. It's a direct sequel to Link to the Past, and that was how you did that in that game.
Yeah. So it makes sense.
Right.
Anyways, I really enjoyed how they approached the general exploration of this game. I felt like everything was really organic. I felt like I was revisiting places from when I played this game as a child, but it didn't feel necessarily like a rehash. It felt like it had progressed. And in searching through these new areas, it allowed you to connect to the other side, but you had to continue searching through Hyrule. Because of how fragmented Lowrule was, you couldn't just go from Lowrule section to Lowrule section, which absolutely incentivized the traveling.
Right. And on top of that, if they had made a Link to the Past remake, I would have been happy. I probably would have been ecstatic. But they didn't just do that. They took the concept of Link to the Past and made every single bit about it better.
Which is still baffling that that's a thing that can be said.
It is. One of the things I noticed, because I replayed Link to the Past right before I played Link Between Worlds.
I think a lot of people did.
Exactly. And so when I played it, I was like, oh, this game is so amazing. I always love this game. It's so great. And when I played Link Between Worlds, I looked back at Link to the Past and I was like, I cannot believe how dated it looks compared to Link Between Worlds. And you know, for a game that's, 25 years in difference? You'd think that that's not a hard mark to sell, but, like, one of the things that was really noticeable to me was, like, the analog movement of Link in Link Between Worlds was just so organic versus Link Between Worlds, which still used a kind of tile rendering based setup.
It was better than it was on Nintendo, but yeah, it was just the control. It was a Super Nintendo game. It's just what you had. We still had D-pads.
So it was just astounding to me how they managed to take a dated formula that has been proven by the test of time as having worked really well and found some way to improve upon it in every single fashion and not make it feel stale in any point.
What I thought was really fascinating was how this game didn't just seem like a continuation of what they had been doing with these games, but it seemed like they actually took the lessons they learned from Skyward Sword, Link to the Past, from Majora's Mask. They really rolled that all up into this game and gave a really solid gaming experience. Not solid, phenomenal gaming experience.
Right.
That it didn't drag, it didn't hold your hand, it didn't overwhelm you with plot, but it didn't cram a ton of plot down your throat.
Well, and
but there was still a lot of plot.
One of the major complaints that they had, that a lot of people had about recent Zelda games, Skyward Sword specifically, was that it was very railroady. It was, you start at point A, you go to point B, C, D, E, F, G, all in that order.
Yeah. I couldn't stand it.
And that was another thing that apparently Miyamoto said, was he was like, we're getting rumblings on people not liking this. Let's bring it back to a more open world style. And they really, really stepped up for that.
They did. They 100% stepped up for it. And then they said, you know what? People like this. I think we're going to go whole hog. And
Breath of the Wild.
I have beaten it, and it is so good. Jerk, it's so good, you don't even know.
Yeah, I got to get myself a Switch, and
so good.
Then I will beat and play that game.
Oh,
I've heard it compared very favorably to Horizon Zero Dawn, which is in my top 5 all-time games.
And now that I have acquired it, I will be able to give you my 2 cents about that before the end of the year. Yeah, let's be real.
Yeah, I know. Your backlog is huge.
It's actually not as bad as it could be, but the next game on my list is Dark Souls 3, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn was so good enough for me that when they announced the DLC for the Frozen Wilds, I immediately went and bought it for pre-order.
Nice.
It doesn't come out until December. I already am ready to download as soon as it comes out.
I am legit excited to try it, but getting back to the case at point, one thing I think I'll be really interested to talk to you about in Breath of the Wild is that until you get past the starting area, and even then for a little while, it's been called Zelda Dark Souls Edition. You're going to die a lot.
Oh.
Yeah, don't be too proud.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing I've heard about Breath of the Wild is the whole, you have an item, and the item is broken. Now you have another item, and that item is also broken.
They actually do the combat in such a way that a lot of people were talking about, I'm going to derail us from this after this, but a lot of people were talking about how normally they would save their better items, but they did the combat in such a way that I never actually felt like I needed to save my awesome items. The game is very well paced. It's very well spread out.
Okay.
But we'll come back to that at a later date.
Right. Well, that's a 3D Zelda, and so therefore it's not the focus of this episode.
But Link Between Worlds did kind of feel like it was the natural step from going, we're railroading them too hard to we are giving them all the freedom. Link Between Worlds was an amazing stepping stone, and prior to Breath of the Wild coming out, Link Between Worlds was everything I wanted in a Zelda game.
You mean Breath of Legend of Zelda Skyrim Edition?
Yeah, I don't play your Western RPG, so I couldn't say. But again, before Breath of the Wild, Link Between Worlds was everything I wanted in a Zelda game. Then Breath of the Wild came out, and I went, This is everything
I wanted in a 3D Zelda game.
I didn't even know I wanted all this, and I want it. This is so... I gotta stop myself, or I'm gonna start
Because you'll talk all about it, and then you'll ruin it, and Brent will be sad that he didn't get to talk about it with you.
That's fine. Don't worry, Brent. We're still gonna include you later. It will take 3 episodes to get to Breath of the Wild, but neither here nor there.
That's better than the 4 we took for the 2Ds.
Hey, man, these were a lot of good quality games, except for this last one. Good segue. So, after Link Between Worlds came out, they said they're going to do a multiplayer-focused game called Triforce Heroes. This game is actually a direct sequel to Link Between Worlds, if you didn't know that. The green Link in that is the hero from Link Between Worlds. This game isn't good. There's really no two ways about it.
Not going to even beat around that.
I'm not going to. It's a 3-person dungeon crawler where the goal is to try to get the best loot so you can get a better costume that changes your stats incrementally. They wasted so much opportunity on this. The level design isn't that interesting. Everybody draws off the same life meter, so if you're playing with Brent, you want to stab him to death. I'd apologize, Brent, but we all did. I'm very sorry, sort of, except focus, man.
Apparently this is a sorry not sorry moment.
Yeah, I'm not. He got us killed more than once. Anyways.
I did not even know this game existed until I started looking into the 2D Zeldas, and I was like, oh, they brought out another game after Link Between Worlds.
It doesn't even feel like a Zelda game, to be honest with you. It feels like somebody wanted to make a weird Diablo clone, and they're like, well, it felt like the Kirby game of the Zelda series, because Kirby always gets real experimental, like Kirby Mass Attack, Kirby Canvas Curse. He gets weird side games. This was Zelda's weird side game, and it didn't work, because Four Swords Heroes, at least that kind of felt like a Zelda game with the multiplayer aspect. This felt like a weird dungeon crawler that included some time trial elements, and it wasn't good. I can't defend it.
Was that the one where you had to, like, get specific crystals or something?
Triforce Heroes?
Yeah.
I remember that...
There were, like, specific things you collected, and whoever got them got some special, like, power-up with it.
Oh, no, that was Four Swords Adventures, okay. Which at this point we've recorded quite a while ago, so I don't blame you for not remembering it. Anyways, Triforce Heroes, there were no characters from the main games. Zelda wasn't in it. The King of Hyrule wasn't associated with it. The bad guy wasn't Ganon, wasn't anybody you ever heard of. It was some fashion lady. It wasn't good. When it came out, you heard a lot of people try to defend it, and unfortunately, they fell victim to the fact that they were just wanting a Zelda game to be good. It, at best, was a 7 out of 10. At very, very best. Near the tail end of the game, they did some interesting stuff with color-based platforming puzzles, which that was actually interesting. That was 1 out of 6 or 1 out of 8 worlds. It wasn't enough to save it. The game felt unnecessary, and it was... I don't want to be too harsh on it, but it wasn't... It was a waste of time. It was a waste of time and money.
In a series like Zelda, it deserves to be
better,
bad-mouthed.
Yeah, like I don't want them to make another one of these. If they made a Triforce Heroes 2, I would not buy it, unless it came out and they were giving it 10s out of 10s and said they fixed literally everything, which to me means it would be a different game. But just some of the aspects, like you had to make you could pick each other up to make a tower, because sometimes height played a dimension in the puzzle solving, but the middle guy couldn't do anything. So if you made a 3-person tower, the bottom one could move, the top one could use an item, but the only thing the middle one could do is throw off the top guy, which means the only thing the middle one could do was be a dick. There was... I'm going to get wound up in a negative way, and after we just fanboyed about Link Between Worlds for over half an hour...
It's a real strange dichotomy between the two.
Yeah, it's... I talked to Brent and Kraus, both of whom have been on the show extensively into getting it, and I regret it. I've apologized to them. I thought it'd be a good multiplayer game, and it wasn't a good game, which is a huge... I was hoping it'd be another Four Swords adventure.
So are you saying this was absolutely the worst 2D Zelda game?
Thinking hard? Now, we're not including the Forbidden games, the CDI ones. Yeah, I watched.
Those were not done by Zelda or by Nintendo. They weren't even done with oversight by Nintendo.
They were not.
They were done. Nintendo was like, yeah, you can do this, and then it really, really bit them. It's not part of Hyrule Historia.
You know, actually, when you go back and look at the reviews of the time, they actually didn't get bad reviews when they came out.
Yeah, the mark was pretty low back then.
Yeah. But anyways, not including the Forbidden games, I would say it is the worst game. I think if Link's Adventures was nominally easier, it would hands down be the worst game. But Link's Adventure was difficult enough combined with different enough that it's not an overwhelming loss.
You're talking about Zelda 2.
Yeah. That game had a rough time.
That game was a product of its era. Just absolutely a product of its era.
It hasn't aged.
Triforce Heroes was, we're trying to push the envelope, whereas Zelda 2 was, we're trying to iterate the game.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out, but a lot of the mechanics that were in it actually ended up in a lot of later games.
It did. In fact, we talk about that extensively in the first episode.
We did.
All that being said, Triforce Heroes, I want to say positive things about it. I can't. I can't say anything positive about it.
The only positive thing you can say is, yes, it has Zelda in the title, and yes, it has Link as a character.
I can't even...
And that's that's the entirety of it.
I don't even know that that's a positive, because it's not... There's nothing Link about it. Zelda's not in the game. In fact... I'm not 100% sure. Is it called Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes, or is it just called Triforce Heroes?
I don't know. I would imagine it's Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes.
I would imagine so, but thinking back on it, she wasn't included in the slightest. I can't imagine. Nope, Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes. Alright, reviews were too kind to this game. This is one of the cases where I actually went against the popular grain.
Oh, according to this real quick, back to Link Between Worlds, we were talking about, was it Link and Zelda, or was it just Zelda who did the restoration of the
You asserted
Triforce?
it was Zelda.
I did, and apparently they say that it was Link and Zelda together.
Woo!
Which, maybe they needed two of the people that could use the Triforce there, since they both had a piece.
We might just be trying to put too much to it as well.
Well, we did just spend 4 whole episodes on talking about these, so...
4 hours of Zelda!
Seriously.
And on that note, I think we're about good to wrap this up. So, Jake, thank you tremendously for coming on.
Always happy.
Fantastic. So, jump online. Tell us what you thought of any of the 2D Zelda games. Why we were wrong. Why we were right. Why we were super right. And until next time, my name is Josh, and this is Co-Opinions.